Yeah. A big hello to everyone and welcome to the InStyle Knitting Studio. This time I would like to briefly tell you how I knitted this children's cardigan. I knitted it for my daughter. She is about 110 centimeters tall, which is for 5 years. This cardigan is made from half cotton. I used Yarn Art Jeans yarn and needle size 2 and 2.5. The yarn consumption was about 190 grams, a bit less even. You can see this lace pattern a little further down on my channel, meaning I published this video a bit earlier if you also like this pattern. Now I will explain the details in more depth. Before any knitting, we first knit a sample from our yarn. And then we wash it, dry it, and make our calculations. How to make calculations if someone does not know how to determine their knitting tension. Here is the link above, check it out, and click through. I explain it in detail there. So, I knitted this cardigan from the bottom up, in one piece, both the front and the back. I knitted everything together in turn rows. After making calculations and figuring out how many stitches we need to cast on for the required width of the cardigan, meaning we take measurements from the child, the chest circumference. We can measure or take a cardigan that fits the child. Well, in general, we find out how many centimeters we need here. That is the chest circumference and the hip circumference. For kids, these are usually the same size. So I measure the chest circumference. After that, I calculate my knitting tension. I calculated that I need to cast on 174 stitches. I added 2 edge stitches. I take size 2 needles and cast on 174 plus 2. Then I knit a 1 by 1 rib. 1 knit, 1 purl, 10 rows tall. This is just under 3 centimeters. About 2.5. After that, I switch to the main pattern. And I want to note that these small bands, which will be for the closure, where the buttons will be, I immediately started to knit them in. That is, when casting on stitches, I took these stitches into account. I used 9 stitches for one band, and 9 for the second. So, included in my 174 stitches are these 9 stitches, and these. I immediately knitted 9 stitches in a 1 by 1 rib pattern. And here, I also need to create holes for the buttons right away. I have 7 holes. After knitting the ribbing, we switch to needles that are 2.5 millimeters, which is a bit larger, and move on to the main pattern. I have shown how to knit the main pattern. I have a video, and girls, all the nuances and all the videos that will help you knit this cardigan will be in the link below this video. So this pattern will also be in the link under the video. Go ahead and watch how to knit it. It is very simple to knit after we have knitted this huge piece, which includes the back and the bands, all together in the main pattern. I have knitted 6 patterns before starting the sleeve. I closed 2 patterns here for the sleeve. That is, we knitted 2 patterns, then closed 2 patterns. Next we knit the back. For the back, I used 1, 2, 3, 4 patterns. Then again for the second sleeve, 2 patterns, we close the stitches. And on this front piece I have 2 more patterns, so we are already dividing our piece. knitting the back separately, we will knit the front separately. After we close 2 patterns for each sleeve, we knit the front piece. Then we continue knitting straight in the main pattern. I knitted 3 patterns straight for this part. And then I proceed to the neckline. That is, there will be decreases here. But not exactly here, rather after this band. We also knit the band with 9 stitches in a 1x1 ribbing. And then I have the decreases here. So if counting the number of patterns from the bottom, I have 9 patterns in height. I knitted and began to decrease. Or 3 patterns from the beginning of the sleeve. Here we make a decrease. How do I make decreases? I decreased in height over the course of one next pattern. I knitted 2 purl stitches together, that is, I made a decrease on the purl side every row. After that, I left the stitches open. We also knit the second front piece. How did I knit the back? After we closed 2 patterns on the sleeve, I knitted the back straight. 3 full patterns in height straight, not finishing the 4th pattern in height. These little notches were left undone. Here, yes, the entire pattern in height is not knitted. Here I closed the middle and left 16 stitches on one side and on the other side. Then, after closing the middle, here I knitted 1 row of knits and the second row of purls. And I made 1 decrease right here. I also made a decrease here. As a result, instead of 16 stitches, I ended up with 15. Just like on the front pieces. In order to later sew stitch by stitch, this is how we finished the back. Also leaving the stitches open. Next, we are going to knit the sleeve. I knitted the sleeve from the bottom up. In turning rows, that is, first I cast on the ribbing and knitted it. We also changed needles to a smaller size. I had a 2. For the sleeve, I cast on 39 stitches. That is, we also take measurements of the arm circumference right here, over the child's sweater, and we calculate how many stitches to cast on. Or for example, we can place the sweater against the child's arm and calculate how many stitches to cast on. I had 39 stitches and I knitted ribbing 1 by 1, 3 centimeters. Then I added 2 stitches after knitting the ribbing, and started to knit the main pattern. This is what I knitted. 2 patterns high, and I ended up with 3 reports in width for the sleeve, 3 check marks. I knitted 2 patterns high straight, and then I began to increase. But I want to tell you that my increases were not pretty. I do not recommend this to you, because it resulted in a sharp transition, a sudden increase. How did I do it? So after knitting 2 patterns straight in height on the 3rd pattern for 14 rows, I made increases in every row. At the beginning of each row, and I ended up with such a steep increase. Therefore, I advise you to make increases every other row. That is, to stretch the increase over 2 rows for example, and then 3 reports up. I knitted 3 patterns straight. After that, I again made increases. Only over the course of 2 patterns in height. And I reached 81 stitches. After that I knitted half the pattern straight. And I closed the sleeve on the right side. We also knit the second sleeve. After we have knitted the sleeves, we sew the back to the front here. With 15 stitches left open. We sew both shoulders stitch by stitch. Then we sew the sleeves. This way you can see. It goes square, so there is 1 pattern here. Under the arm, and 1 here. The sleeves are sewn. Of course, throughout the knitting, we do not forget. And we calculate how far apart to make the buttonholes. By the way, what to do with this little placket? As I knitted it, when we left here 15 stitches. We do not bind off this placket, we continue knitting the rib separately. I knit 9 stitches. In ribbing, I check what length I need for the neckline. I finish knitting to this point. And here I also had open stitches in ribbing. Then, I sew stitch by stitch. After that, I will put this strip here on the back. This is how I made the neckline, and knitted this simple little flower. In brief, this is what I wanted to share. You caught the essence or not, but all little details I marked for myself, I have shared with you. If something interests you, if something is unclear, feel free to ask questions in the comments. Subscribe, because there will be quite a few interesting tutorials in the near future. Stay tuned to the channel. Thank you for being with me. See you.